Welcome to the fifth part of programming mobile devices. In this session, we're going to explore some data relationships, and we'll use as a real-life example the Plant Places website. We're also going to consider some interfaces and how we can stub out those interfaces, and also we're going to consider layouts and activities and how they work together in the Android program. First, what we'll do is we're going to make something similar. This is the real Plant Places application, and we're going to make something similar to this. But the question is, what is this? This is a place where I can fetch a latitude and longitude for a plant. But what do I mean by plant? What I mean is a specimen of a plant. So if we have something like Acer freemanni, which is a type of maple, well, that describes a plant, and there are thousands, probably millions of actual specimens around the world. So we have to figure out what's a specimen, what's a plant. These are some things that we struggled through when we were making Plant Places in the very beginning. Here I have Plant Places, and let's see, I'll pull up Acer. Well, I'll tell you what, how about we start, that's okay, we'll pull up Acer. And if we look here, we have a list of plants. By a plant, it's something with a genus and a species, Acer campestre, Acer sicifolium, so on and so forth. Before long, we'll get down to the freemanni. All of these are, I bet you probably never knew there were so many different types of maples. So we have here Acer freemanni. Now, what we're looking at here is a picture of a specimen of Acer freemanni, not a very good one, I actually took that one. This is a specimen of freemanni at the zoo. But now we see there's also an Acer freemanni at Spring Grove Cemetery. So a plant is a concept of Acer freemanni, and that means it has these attributes: family, genus, species, cultivar, origin, size description. These are things we can say about every Acer freemanni that we can touch. But then underneath that, we have specimens of Acer freemanni, or a specific plant with a specific GPS location. So we kind of have a one-to-many relationship here. A plant can have many specimens. Believe it or not, that's not where the story ends. I'm going to click on Map of Plants, and then I'm going to move this over so we can see it better on the window. See Internal Map. These are maps that are internal to a location. This, for example, is the Cincinnati Zoo. This is showing plants at the Cincinnati Zoo. So, each of these is a specimen of a plant. A specimen of a plant. I can click on, say, I don't know what this is, Gelsinium. Okay. Within this, we'll see several different specimens pictured. Here's one I captured with a GPS device. I don't remember where that... Oh, you know what? That probably was at the zoo, because that's roughly the zoo's coordinates. And looks like I captured two of them at the zoo. So this is a plant that has at least two specimens. But if we go back, we see this plant also belongs to a broader location, which is the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Gardens. All of these plants belong to that location. So now we have three concepts floating around: a plant, a specimen of a plant, and a location that contains many plants. These are the types of data that we're going to need to model. If we take a look at the Android application that exists, this screen is the first screen to come up, and essentially it is saving specimens. Now, latitude and longitude are fetched from the device, so we'll see when we populate that they will populate over here in this blank area. It's not something we can type in. We have to get that from our device. Name of location, that's actually kind of redundant. We're not going to use that in our in-class example. Description of plant, though, we will. We might say if there are a lot of plants, a lot of specimens, we might specify one versus the other. Now, we can also try to associate a GPS with an existing plant. So I can hit Find Specimen, and again, this is running with live data off of Plant Places. And in a moment, it will render the search for a plant screen. I can say Acer, type in the word Acer. Debugger occasionally runs a little bit slowly. Okay, we'll dismiss the keyboard that came up. Hopefully it will still keep my Acer in there. Maybe I won't be so lucky. Oh, shoot. Okay, come on. Okay, Acer, and then actually I'll click away. Okay, so at this point we're searching for a plant. And then I hit search. Now what it's going to do is it's going to go to plantplaces.com and it's going to find all Acers that are in plantplaces.com as plants. I can find something like the Acer freemonii by scrolling down this list. By the way, the things we see here are things that we're going to develop in this class, so things like this moving list. Okay, there we go. Autumn Blaze Maple. I click on that and I have two options. I can either associate GPS with a specimen that already exists, or I can add a new specimen. If I choose add a new specimen, it takes me back to my original screen, but at least now it knows what plant I'm associating this with, in this case Acer freemonii. What we just looked through was fairly advanced, but I just wanted to show that there is a relationship between a plant and a specimen, so these are things we're going to need to consider. Now the site means where is this plant located? And once again, this is running with live data from plant places, so these are sites that we've already identified. And it's a scrollable list, and again, this is something that we're going to look at. But this is kind of like a location that can contain many plants. So I could pick any of these. I'll go ahead and pick Marvin's. This is a location that can have many plants associated with it. So if we're thinking like Java developers, we're going to have a DTO for a plant. We're going to have a DTO for a location that contains many plants. As a matter of fact, we might want to call that a site. Let's call that a site because the word location is already used for GPS and I don't want to confuse those terms. We're also going to have a specimen. And a specimen is going to belong to both a plant and a location. If that sounds a bit confusing, trust me, it took us a long time to get that all figured out, but we finally did. So that's what we're going to start with. Also, what we want to do is we want to make a layout that's like this. This layout we see is organized in rows and columns, and in Android, this is called a table layout. Let's start with that. We'll start with our table layout, and then we'll add our DTOs. If this lecture gets too long, I might split it into two different parts. So I'm going to go ahead and dismiss this debug window, and I'm going to run back to our our working exercise. Okay, one other thing I wanted to mention before we get too far is this Android manifest. The Android manifest is actually an XML file, and this specifies the first activity that will start. I called mine Location Finder. That'll work. While it's an XML file, it also has a graphical user interface sitting on top of it. We'll learn a lot more about this throughout the quarter. Okay, if I go to Location Finder, I see that it is currently referencing a layout called r.layout.main. The set content view, what that's basically saying is I want to be associated with this layout, r.layout.main. Okay? And r.layout.main is actually a constant generated under gen com plant places UI r.java. Don't worry too much about that because what it's doing is it's essentially referring to this XML file under layout. That's fine. I'd rather call it something like location layout, but okay, we'll stick with main for the moment. So I'm going to click on main, and let's see what we have. This is, it's a linear layout. You know what? I think I am going to go ahead and make a new layout so that I can start from scratch. So I'm going to right click on, again, I'm in Res and Layout. I'm going to right click on Layout, and I'm going to say New, and I'm going to say Android XML file. If you don't see that in your own Eclipse, you might have to go to Other and find it there. But in any case, right-click on Layout, choose New, Android XML file. When I choose this, let's see, we'll give it a file. We'll say location layout. I guess layout's kind of redundant. Let's just call it, shoot, let's just call it location. Now the root element means what kind of layout do we want to use. One option is linear layout, where it just lines up widgets, GUI widgets next to each other. We saw it worked a little bit better if we used a table layout, which allows us to actually specify rows. Given everything we have to throw on this screen, that's going to work a little bit better for us. So I'm going to choose Finish. Now, as keeping with our Scrum methodology, we're going to do this in iterations. So we'll do a little bit, test, do a little more, test again. I'm going to expand so we can see most of this screen. Actually, no, I do want that over here. What I need to do in a table layout is I need to add rows to it. Okay, let me squish. This is kind of tricky fitting this all into this resolution. So I click on Layouts, and I click on Table Row. An easy way to do this is just to grab the table row and drop it immediately under the table layout. This now gives me a row where I can start adding UI elements. Grab another row, stick it on table layout again, and they'll just stack up like that. And there we go. And there we go. And they'll continue to stack like that. Now, as I recall, the first thing that I had was a label. Actually, I had two labels. So I'm going to go to Form Widgets, and it's kind of hard to read in this resolution, but a label in Android is called a text view. So I'm going to take the text view, and I'm going to drop it. Notice as I mouse over this table layout, it highlights the different rows. I'll drop it here. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to choose Edit Text. Now, a kind of interesting thing comes here. We get this resource chooser that comes up, and if I want to say latitude and then a colon, because that's what I want to be in the label, it won't let me do it, and that's a good thing. Remember that we don't hard code strings in Android. That will help us significantly with internationalization. Okay? We put strings instead in a configuration file, like a properties file. So what I actually have to do here is remove that string resource and click the New String button. This seems like a little bit of work, but it is nice to have all of our strings in one location. Okay, for the string, I'm going to say the text that I want in there. I'll say latitude, colon, and then I have to give it a constant name. I'll say new r.string.lbl, because this is a label, latitude. Okay, and there we go. And now it tells me I want to put the resource in strings XML. I choose OK. And choose LBL latitude and choose OK again. And there we go. Now we actually have a latitude label. Now I also need a place that will store the latitude value when we get it back from the location service. So I'm going to drop another text view on here, and I'm going to edit text, and I'm going to call this, let's do a new string. I don't want anything to be in here until I have a latitude, so I'm just going to make this string called blank. And we'll leave it empty, and I'll choose OK and blank. Also, it's a good idea, and shoot, I hope, okay. It's a good idea as soon as we can to change the names of these views, because text view 1, text view 2 is going to make no sense at all to us when we're in the action class that supports this layout. So I'm going to right click over in the outline view and choose Edit ID, and I'll call this TXT. We'll say latitude label. Okay, that's for the label. And for the other one, I'll right click, edit ID, and we'll say this is actually more of a value field. So I'll just say TXT latitude value, because again, the latitude is actually going to be populated from the phone itself. And I choose OK. Okay, let's do this again for longitude, except we'll do longitude on the next row. So I drop a text view, right click, edit text, and this will be old hat before too long. New R string, and I'll say LBL longitude, I think I got that right, and I'll say longitude, and then a colon, and then I'll choose OK. LBL longitude, that works for me. Okay, I'll drop on another text view, And this one, since it'll be a little easier if I go ahead and change the ID now. So I'll call that txt longitude value. And now for the text, I'm going to go back and just select that blank. Again, we can certainly reuse these string mappings. So blank, there we go. Longitude, edit ID, I'll say txt longitude label. Okay. Now, what I can do is I can add another row, and this time I'll make a new label that just says description. So this will be like a description of the specimen. Okay, so new string, and we'll call this one description. Okay, the value description, colon, whoops, and there we go. And choose OK. And description, and there we go. Now what I need to do is I need something where the user can enter a value. So I'm going to take an edit text. Hopefully I'll line this up right. If not, I can fix it in outline mode. I'll drop the edit text there. That looks good. And this is where the user can enter a description. I'll right click and I'm going to say edit ID, and we'll call this EDT description. Okay? And again, this is a description of the specimen that we're saving. I'll right click again and I will choose edit text, and we'll make this one blank as well. There we go. Now that doesn't give the user a lot of room to write a description. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say layout width. Let me go down actually to properties, and I'm going to say layout gravity. I know it's off the screen here, but I'll say fill vertical. Oh, shoot, that didn't really help. Sorry. Let me see if it'll let me control Z that. Sometimes, okay, no, let's make control Z that. Okay. Okay, 1 second. Properties, and then I want to do, oh, it's not the layout okay, 1 second. It's actually the layout weight that I want, not the gravity. Of course, they both sound alike, so I got a bit confused. If I scroll down, let's see if I can get this up on the screen. I click on layout weight. If we have multiple things in a row, we can give them all weight. Now, weight is relative. What it's going to do is it's going to add up all of the weights of everything in that row. And then for each individual item, it will give it its weight value divided by the sum of the weights for everything in that row. Now, I haven't given any weight value to anything in this row yet, so if I say 1 on this edit text, we see it will consume the entire row. If I were to take this label and also give it a layout weight of 1, we would see the total weight of the row. Well, it didn't, okay, didn't do exactly what I wanted. Let me see if I can get that to work again. 1 second. Every once in a while things don't go as planned live, but this one won't let it bother me too much. I believe what I need to do. Oh, no, there it goes, there it goes. So now roughly it's cut these two in half. It's given these both about half. So it gives, this has a layout weight of 1, this has a layout weight of 1 as well. 1 plus 1 is 2, so this gets 1 over 2. This also gets 1 over 2, and they roughly both get half the real estate. This label isn't so important though. It's really the edit text that I want to have the weight. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to undo its layout weight so that the edit text will take up as much of that screen as possible. So I'll just remove that, and there we go. Okay, that looks better. Now we know we're going to want some more things, but again, we're doing an iterative approach. We just want one thing at a time. So what I'm going to do now is take a button and, oh shoot, that's what I did. Okay, looks like I made that extra big. I might go back and clean that up. I'll take a button and drop it in the next row. And yeah, I did something goofy there. I think I accidentally put a weight on the entire row. One easy way to find it is to go just look at the XML behind the scenes and what did I do there? Is there anything I can see quickly? I did. Okay. I put a weight on the entire row, which kind of made it a little bit goofy. So let me go back and on the entire row now, I'm going to reset its layout weight We'll just remove it. There we go. That looks much better. That's why everything looked goofy for a while. Okay, now I have a button. We'll make this a save button. We know we're going to want to add more to this screen, but for the moment, this will get us enough where we can start thinking about what we want to do on the back end. So edit text, I'm going to do a new string, and I'm going to say btn save location, and the string I'm going to make save location. And then I will choose OK, and btn save location. Okay, and there we go. Once again, edit ID. We'll call this btn save location, and there we go. Did I change the ID for this? Yes, I did. Okay, everything looks good. So at this point, I'm going to save. Now I can go back to my location finder, and what I can do is I can tell it I no longer want to use that main.xml. Instead, I want to use location.xml. Behind the scenes, while I was doing all this work, Android did a few things for me. First of all, it created a new constant for that location XML that I can use. Secondly, it took all my strings and put them in the string XML file where we'll see the name of the string that I created and the value. Save location, for example, is the label I just put on the button. So Android does all this for us behind the scenes, which is really nice of it. Okay? So I go back to Location Finder, and what I can do now is instead of r.layout.main, I'll say r.layout.location. Okay? And that says I no longer want to use that main layout, I want to use this location layout. And we'll save. Of course, in iterative development, we want to make sure everything looks good. We want to do small cycles, so I'll go ahead and launch the debugger and we'll see what we have here. This will take a moment, so I'm going to pause the video for just a moment while it comes up. And there, I suppose, one nice thing about having a recorded session is that things that I know will take time, I can pause, restart the recording once it comes up, and then I don't waste any of your time. So here we see our latitude and longitude. We know those are going to be basically read-only to us. They're going to be set by the application. We see we have a description. I can type in here. And then I have a save location button that I can press. So first iteration, not too bad. We're starting to get a user interface. We're starting to get some things in here that we can use. Okay, and nothing's going on in our button yet, but at least we're starting to get something. So I'm going to close. What we're going to need to do now is within our location finder, we're going to need to get references to these view components. So what I can do is in Eclipse, I can press Control O. Control O will show me all methods in my local class. It's one thing I really like about Eclipse. If I hold down and press Control O again, it will show me all inherited methods. And there is a method called find view by ID. Every widget in Android extends a class, or actually maybe it's an interface, but I'm fairly certain it's a class. Every one of these visual widgets extends a class named view. So find view by ID means run out to that form and give me access to the widget on that form that has this ID. So what I can do now, whoops, is I can say find view by ID. Okay, hopefully it won't get too mad at me here. Okay, and that requires an argument, which I expected, so I'll say r.view, I'm sorry, r.id. And now, the nice thing about that constants file that Android gives me is I get this context-sensitive help. And remember how I renamed a bunch of those views? Well, if we look here, we'll have things like our latitude value and our longitude value, and we should have our description and our button. So we can use this to get access to each of these components. Let me go ahead and get latitude value, okay? And that was actually a view, but it was more specifically a text view. So I'm going to cast it to text view, and Eclipse tells me I don't know what a text view is. So let Let me make sure of myself here. That was a text view. Yeah, that was a text view. I thought so. What I can do is Control-Shift-O. In Eclipse, Control-Shift-O will automatically add imports. For some reason, it doesn't like this. One moment. Normally in Eclipse, if it knows it needs to import something, we can Control-Shift-O and it will automatically import it. For some reason, it wasn't able to find this one, so I just went out and found the package, and there we go. I'll add it manually like we used to do in the old school, unless I misspelled it somehow. Or maybe we just need a clean bill. Okay, I'll do another find view by ID. Oh, I know one other thing I need to do. I actually need to store this in a variable. My variable type will be text view again. Text view will say txt latitude value equals, boom. There we go. Okay, now we're clean. I think it was mad at me because I had not stored that in a variable. So there we go. Once we have this text view, okay, I'm trying to resize here. Well, let's see, maybe if I pull Eclipse, there we go. Once I have this text view, I can do things to it. txt latitude value dot get text. That will tell me what text is currently in that. Now, we're in the onCreate method, which is kind of like a constructor, so that's not going to return anything valuable yet, but eventually it will. Okay? I'll do text view txt longitude value equals, again, text view to cast, and then find view by ID. This time I'll get r.id txt longitude value. Okay. Now I'll say edit text txt description equals. Now remember, the text view is read-only, but the edit text is what we can go in and edit. So our description we made in edit text, but we get it the same way. We use find view ID and we simply cast the widget that we get back. Find view by ID. r.id .txt, or was it EDT? EDT description. There we go. Okay, let me try Control-Shift-O again. There we go. The Control-Shift-O worked this time. It was able to find the edit text. So now at this point, we have access to 3 of the 4 widgets that we placed. We'll get the button next. Button, btn, I think we called it save specimen. That'll work. Equals button, find view by ID, r.id.btn save location. Okay, Control-Shift-O to organize imports, and again, this time it found it. Now, I've made a little error here, not really an error, but something that needs to be refactored. Notice that each of these are local variables, but in reality, the onCreate method is kind of like a constructor, and probably what I'm going to do is make a save method. We can make it private even. Private void save. And I'm going to want the button to invoke this save method, and I'm going to want it to have access to these variables here. But right now, if I say txt latitude value, Eclipse doesn't know what it is because it's out of scope. Remember, a local variable is only alive from the point at which it is declared until the closed curly in which it is declared. So essentially the area I have highlighted right now. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to right-click and choose Refactor, and I'm going to say, one moment, I believe that, okay, one moment. There is a way where you can tell Eclipse, take this local variable and make it an attribute. There we go, convert local variable to field. I just have to highlight it. Okay. Let me try it this way. Convert local variable to field. There we go. And OK. And you see what it does then is it declares the variable up here and assigns it down here. We used to have to do that manually in NetBeans, but in Eclipse I can do all of this with Refactor and then convert local variable to field. And there we go. OK. And we'll keep doing this. So if I want to change a local variable to an attribute, all I have to do is right-click, refactor, and do like so. Okay, there we go. Now in my save method, I can say txt latitude value dot get text dot toString. Okay, and I can store that in a local variable that I will eventually persist to the database. Txt longitude value dot get text. Oops, sorry. Dot toString. That's going to give me whatever text is inside that field. txt, actually that I should make that edt. Okay, txt description, I should make that edt description. So right click, refactor, um, rename. Okay, edt description. The nice thing here is notice that it synchronizes all cases of this attribute, edt description. So when I change the name up here on line 12, it also changes on line 23. And there we go. Okay, now my save method, edt description. Okay, dot get text, dot toString. Okay, now my save method, I have access to everything that the user entered in each of these fields. But the trick is I'm not doing anything with it. We know we typically like to, when we get something from a method, assign it to a variable. Once again, not to fear. In Eclipse, I can hold down Control 1, and I can say assign statement to new local variable. And there we go. String, let's see, str latitude. Oh, str lat, that's fine. Okay, I go to the next line, hold down Control 1, assign statement to new field. Oops, sorry. Oops. Control Z that. I meant assign to new local. So I Control Z, Control 1, assign to new local variable. Okay, this time we'll say we're going to make this strlng. And then I go to the next line, Control 1, assign to new local variable. String, we'll call this one str description. Okay, and there we go. This one will, for consistency, we'll say strlat, and I will save. And there we go. So things are starting to come together. We're past the 30-minute mark, and I don't want to put too much into this lesson, but we see how we can make a view in XML. I'm sorry, we can make a layout in XML. We can associate that layout with the class that is creating that layout, and soon we're going to see how we can link up that button to the save method. Yeah, that's it. We could probably go ahead and link up the button. It's just a little bit tricky, that's all. So btn save specimen dot. Well, I really want to link up this button to the save method right now, but that requires a discussion on inner classes, which is kind of an in-depth discussion. So let's go ahead and just leave this as it is, and we'll pick up next time with the save button, and also we'll take a look at the DTOs and the interfaces that we're going to need for this to actually make it work for us. Probably I should add some comments here. Why don't I go ahead and do that? Like save the specimen to the persistence layer. There we go. Works for me. Everything else looks good. So we'll wrap this up as our lecture number 5, and we'll see you next time in 6. We'll continue to work on this example. Thank you.